Hello, my friends. Welcome to Tommy Podcast on English Every Day. It's always a pleasure to have you here with me. I like to imagine you walking, maybe drinking a coffee, and I'm right there by your side telling you a story. Because that's what this podcast is, a friendly talk. Before we start, let me share a message I got from Carlos. He said, "Tommy, I finally clicked the red button, but I swear it was looking at me with a lazy face. I laughed so much at that. So, if your button has been lazy too, go cheer it up now. Today, I want to talk about something that changed my life. The biggest lie I believed about learning English, and I'll confess, this lie held me back for years. Maybe you are believing it too without even noticing. The lie was this. I thought that to speak real English, I had to live abroad. I believed that without living in an English-speaking country, I would never make it. That idea was so strong that many times I didn't even try to practice. I kept thinking, anyway, I'll only learn if I live abroad. I remember one conversation when I was a teenager. I was with friends, and someone asked, "Do you speak English?" I answered, "No, because I've never lived abroad." It was automatic. I had placed that condition as an absolute truth. The problem was, this belief froze me, because living abroad was not possible for me. I had no money, no opportunity. So if that was true, it was like saying, you will never make it. And for a long time, I accepted that. I looked at people who came back from exchange programs speaking good English, and I thought, see, that's the only way. I convinced myself that the problem was not my practice. It was my geography. Until one day, everything changed. I was in a coffee shop, trying to order a coffee in English. I had studied a few phrases, but I always carried that excuse in my head. I won't sound natural because I don't live abroad. But that day, I took the risk. I looked at the barista and said, "A coffee, please." And guess what? He understood. He brought my coffee. Conversation complete. That was the moment when the lie began to break. Because I didn't need to live abroad to be understood. I only needed to open my mouth. Say it with me now, as if you were ordering, "A coffee, please." Simple, but it works. After that day, I started paying attention to something else. I noticed that I had already learned many things without living abroad. I had never lived in France, but I knew words in French. I had never lived in Italy, but I understood some Italian phrases. So why would English be different? That's when I realized the real key is not where you are, but how much you practice. And practice can happen anywhere in the world. In this episode, I'm going to tell you how this lie held me back for years, and how I finally discovered the truth that set me free. Because if you also believe this lie, you may be wasting time, waiting for a condition that might never come. And I want you to discover, together with me, that you already have everything you need to learn. The first lie that held me back was believing I would only learn English if I lived abroad. But that wasn't the only one. I also fell into other traps. One of them was believing that learning English depended on talent. I used to think, some people are born with a gift for languages, others are not. I don't have that gift. That belief crushed me. Because every time I got stuck, I told myself, see, you were not born for this. I remember one moment at school. The teacher asked each student to introduce themselves in English. One classmate went up, spoke fluently, and it sounded natural. When it was my turn, I froze. I could only say, "My name is Tommy." I sat down, embarrassed, and thought, he has talent. I don't. Only years later, I realized that this classmate practiced more than I did. It wasn't talent, it was discipline. Say it with me now, as if you were introducing yourself. My name is simple. Straightforward. You don't need talent, you just need practice. Another lie I believed was that I needed an expensive course to learn. I thought, if I can't pay, I'll never speak well. That belief held me back. For years, I saw ads promising fast fluency, teachers talking about exclusive methods, and I believed the secret was locked inside a paid classroom. There was a time when I even saved money to join a course. I felt excited, thinking it would be the solution. But soon, I noticed something. Even in the course, if I didn't practice outside the classroom, nothing changed. The course was just a push. The real work was still mine. One unforgettable moment happened during a trip. I was with friends, and we needed to ask for directions on the street. Everyone looked at me, saying, "You took the course, Tommy. Go ahead." And to my shame, I froze. Nothing came out. That day I realized it was not about the course. It was about daily practice. And there was one more lie that held me back a lot, believing I had to speak perfectly before opening my mouth. This might have been the one that paralyzed me the most. I kept rehearsing sentences in my head, waiting for the moment when I would make no mistakes. That moment never came. One time, a tourist asked me on the subway, "Is this train going downtown?" I knew the answer. I just had to say yes. But I kept thinking, should I say yes, it is? Or yes, this train is going downtown? While I was busy trying to find the perfect answer, the train arrived, and he got on without my reply. I stayed there, silent, with a feeling of defeat. Later I realized I only needed to say the simple form. Yes. Say it with me now, naturally. Yes. See? You don't need perfection to communicate. These lies held me back for years. And the worst part is, when you believe them, you always find excuses not to act. I used to say, "I don't live abroad, so there's no point in trying." Or, "I don't have talent, so it won't work." Or, "I don't have money for a course, so it's impossible." But the truth was right in front of me all the time. I didn't need perfect conditions. I only needed to practice with what I had. It was painful to realize the time I lost believing in those lies. But it was also freeing to understand that I could choose another story. And that choice began when I realized English is not about where you live, how much you pay, or if you were born with a gift. It's about real practice, daily, simple. After so much time trapped in those lies, I decided I needed new truths. It wasn't enough to see what was wrong. I had to create another story, a different way of thinking. The first truth I discovered was this: it's not the place that makes you learn, it's the practice. For years I believed I would only learn English by living abroad, but reality showed me the opposite. I could practice every day, in my country, in my room, in the kitchen, on the bus. Geography was not an excuse. A clear example was when I started talking to myself in English. Yes, it felt strange at first, but it worked. I would go into my room, look in the mirror, and say, "Good morning, Tommy." At the beginning I laughed at myself, but little by little it created real reflexes. Say it with me now, as if you were looking at yourself in the mirror. "Good morning." There you go. That's real practice, without needing another country. The second truth was this: there is no talent. There is discipline. When I believed I needed a gift, I gave up fast. But when I understood it was about repeating, training, insisting, my mindset changed. I stopped comparing myself to others and started comparing myself to myself. Yesterday I only said, "My name is Tommy." Today I can already say, "I live in Brazil." And tomorrow, maybe I'll say even more. This focus on small progress gave me strength to keep going. Because it didn't matter if someone else was running faster. What mattered was that I was walking. Another truth that set me free was this: you don't need an expensive course. You need consistency. I realized I could learn with songs, podcasts, free videos, even talking to strangers. One day, walking on the street, a tourist asked me, "Excuse me, where is the bank?" I took a deep breath and answered, "Go straight." It was simple, but it worked. Say it with me now, as if you were helping someone. Go straight. See? No expensive course gave me that. It was real practice. And maybe the most freeing truth of all was this: don't wait for perfection. Speak with what you have. That was the one that changed my English the most, because I was always waiting for the perfect sentence. When I allowed myself to say short sentences, even broken ones, the fear went down. I remember one time in a cafe, the barista asked, "Do you want sugar?" Instead of freezing, I just said, "No sugar, please." She understood, brought the coffee, and that was it. I walked out of there feeling like I had won. These small victories started to build up. Each simple sentence was a brick. And step by step, I built a solid base. I like to think of it as planting seeds. Each sentence you speak is a seed that falls into the ground. Alone, it looks small, but with time, it grows into a tree. And when you look back, you see a forest of sentences you already know. That's how I replaced lies with truths. I didn't need another country, an expensive course, a gift, or perfection. I only needed simple, daily, consistent practice, and this change gave me a new feeling: freedom. Because I wasn't waiting for perfect conditions anymore. I could act now, with what I had. When I think about my whole journey with English, I see that what slowed me down the most was not the lack of material or the lack of opportunities. What slowed me down the most were the lies I believed. Lies that looked innocent, but kept me stuck for years. The biggest one was believing I would only learn English if I lived abroad. That idea held me like an invisible chain. But the truth is, every time I said a simple sentence here in my daily life, I was already breaking that chain. Another lie was thinking I needed talent. Now I know. It's not a gift. It's discipline. Every person you see speaking well was not born with magic in their mouth. That person practiced, made mistakes, started again, and kept going. I also believed I needed an expensive course. But when I started using what I had, songs, podcasts, made-up dialogues in the mirror, I realized the secret was not the price. It was consistency. And the last lie was the lie of perfection. I thought I could only speak if I had the flawless sentence. That silence stole many opportunities from me. But when I started allowing myself to say simple phrases like "no sugar, please," or "go straight," I discovered that communication doesn't depend on perfection. I want you to think now, which of these lies have you been carrying too? Maybe it's the one about living abroad. Maybe it's the one about needing talent. Maybe it's the one about perfection. Identifying that lie is the first step to breaking free from it. I'll never forget one symbolic moment. I was at an airport, and a man asked me in English, "Is this the line for check-in?" I didn't think too much. I just answered, "Yes, this line." He smiled and stayed. It was simple, but in that answer, I felt I had won. I was using English with no excuses, without waiting for perfect conditions. Say it with me now, as if you were answering, "Yes, this line." That's it. Direct, natural, and it works. This whole episode is to remind you that you don't need to wait. You can start now. You already have the tools. What you might be missing is not a method, but the courage to drop the lie and live the truth. So let me sum up our talk. I told you about the lies I believed, that I needed to live abroad, have talent, pay a lot, and be perfect. Then I shared the truths that set me free. Daily practice matters more than place. Discipline beats talent. Consistency beats money. Simplicity beats perfection. And now I want to give you a practical challenge. Today, choose one of these truths and put it into action. Maybe narrate a simple phrase like, "I'm opening the door." Maybe practice in the mirror. "Good morning." Maybe answer a question in your head, but do it with no excuses. And later, come back here and tell me in the comments, which lie did you drop, and which truth did you decide to live from today? I want to know, because maybe your choice will inspire someone who is still stuck. Before we finish, let me leave you with this sentence I keep in my heart. English is not in the place, the talent, the price, or the perfection. English is in your daily practice. If this episode made sense to you, remember the red button. It's still there, waiting. When you click it, it gets excited, and you make sure to keep walking with me in the next episodes. I'm so grateful to have you here. Every time you press play, you remind me that this community believes in one simple thing. Consistency is more important than perfection. And keep this last sentence with you. The biggest lie keeps you trapped, but the truth sets you free to speak. I'm Tommy Podcast from English Every Day. Bye-bye.